Can you see it behind?
All right, today is February the 9th. Right? Correct?
Man, we were ragtag crew, man.
We sure are.
Ragtag crew.
February 9th, 2023, Black History Month.
Can we get a...
Some people believe that LeBron James made Black history by breaking a record for a number of points scored on an NBA history. You guys have to excuse me, I'm chewing a peppermint and it's very delicious.
It's berry delicious, but it's a peppermint though.
Right, I hadn't eaten.
Berry delicious.
Yeah. Okay, so we are here with none other than myself, Dr. X, Little Socrates, and we are men who drink beer and talk. Before I get into it, I wanted to say something. They found a young man up here in Illinois, and he was found. Did y'all hear about him? The EMTs.
What's going on?
He was killed by the EMTs, and they have since
by EMTs.
By EMTs,
I mean,
and they have Illinois has pressed charges. He was going through alcohol withdrawal, and it appeared that he was having a seizure, and he was somewhat unresponsive, and they didn't know how to handle him. And I think he's a 35-year-old black man. He's a manager at McDonald's, and I don't bring that up to diminish him, but I think that obviously he's a hard-working individual, and he lived by himself. He called 911. The police showed up. They brought the EMTs in to take care of him. I believe the police left the scene, and for whatever reason after that, he ended up because of he was I don't want to say he didn't struggle with them, and I wish I had brought the video, but the point is that they ended up strapping him down so hard that he suffocated. And the reason why charges were brought against the EMTs is because it was deemed that they were being dishonest when interrogated. They had conflicting stories about proper EMT training and how to deal with somebody. So, much like Tyree Nichols, we lost another one. And that's just, notable cases. And that's not all that's been lost, but those are the national headlines cases. And you know that this is real because Ben Crump is on the scene. So, at some point, we will tap into what they're doing and the appointed leaders and people who are bought in our community, in my personal opinion. And so I really appreciate the exhilarating discussion that we had earlier today. And I am going to, as my business, not do anything going forward to engage in meaningless dialogue about things that I know to be factually true. All right, so Black history. Can I ask you guys a question? And I don't think we really chewed the fat into it last week. How necessary at this stage in 2023 do you think that Black history is? Black History Month.
You gonna defer to me? Okay. Well, I think that the necessity for an acknowledgement of Black history will never subside. It'll never go away. Our contributions are interwoven into the fabric of America and throughout global history. I think the question is more so like a specialized mark on the calendar where we say this is Black History Month. And I kind of got two views on it. I mean, I've listened to a lot of people. I've heard Morgan Freeman's take on it. I've heard Candace Owens' take on it. I understand where they're coming from with it. But I also think, I think that you can literally make Black history known every day. You know what I mean? I mean, we can talk about things. We can, we can celebrate things. We don't have to wait for someone else to tell us that it's okay. Now, I understand Carter G. Woodson. I understand I understand him wanting to do it in February, allegedly Lincoln's birthday, Frederick Douglass' birthday. It was a week. I get all of that. Even some of my early frat brothers were instrumental in making it become, in making it come to fruition. But I think that the times were a little bit different then. I think now we're in the information age, right? And I do recognize that a lot of groups, they have, like there's Latin Heritage Month, there's American Women, like there's a lot of different days and months that people, they just let casually go by. So I don't necessarily think that we need to have this. I don't necessarily think that it needs to be forced, because a lot of times, we worked in the schools. Half the time, black people, for real.
I do not know what I'm doing.
It's called just volume check first.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so volume check first.
All right, okay,
yeah,
go
there
ahead.
you go. There
All
you
right,
go.
sorry
All right.
about that.
All right, now look, I lost my train of thought. I was like, who's that nigga that sound like me? Apparently it was me. But yes, I digress. But the whole point is that we're in the information age. So if if you keep if as a people that we're saying we're tired of slavery movies, right? We're saying we're tired of trauma movies. We have other stories. Well, it's up to us to uncover and ask questions and dig those stories up and bring those stories to light. So Black history should be an effort every day to uncover what our ancestors brought before us and in pioneers that we have living today.
I think history is important. I think that different takes on history motivate people different ways. I think part of the thing for me in the whole Black history conversation is I have this whole beef with this whole representation theory, this idea that representation is just the end all be all. I don't believe that. I believe that, and my guess is that in the abstract, a lot of history is the same. You know how they say that, history does not repeat, but it rhymes. So my guess is that, the lessons that we need to learn could probably be gleaned from a deep dive into almost any randomly selected, sufficiently wide and deep slice of history. But if you're animated by people that look like you and that are from your ethnic group and have had regional proximity to you, I say all good. But the thing is that history is a huge subject, and you have to make a call as to what matters the most and what's most pertinent to your life right now. That's a tough question, right? Because that could be different for different people. And so I'm certainly not against Black history. I think that there is probably some base level of understanding that Black folk should have, just like about our history in America, or African Americans should have about our history in America, just like there's some baseline understanding that an American should have about the country. But it's an infinitely dense topic. And so you have to make trade-off decisions about what's important and what's not. And I think that should be up to the individual.
Sure, absolutely. I think what I'm concluding is that none of us are against Black history. I think the real question here is who's teaching the history. And I think me and you had a discussion this summer, and it was actually pretty hilarious. You've got dry humor, but sometimes it can be really good. And I had said to you, I said, well, I think that as a part of reparations, we should get, government-backed counseling. And you say, well, I don't know about government-backed. So, I don't know if you even remember saying that, but it choked me up. And so the first thing is,
we ain't getting the best counseling if that's how we're playing it. But anyway,
right.
Sorry, go ahead.
So who's writing the books, the history books? And I think that that's kind of where I begin to look at things. And the reason why is not so much because of, and I think we're going to go with the discussion with LeBron James. It's not so much because there's an issue per se with a quote-unquote level of authenticity associated with the Black history that's given to us in public schools. But there is just, in my understanding of getting a thorough, broad scope of a lot of things and being introduced to history on a much higher level, that there are just omissions.
Of course, but I mean, so look, if we commission a study from our 10 biggest fans, however that would be quantified, about the history of beer in the conversation, some would look at the EC days and be like, because that was what appealed to them, and they might focus on that when they're doing the history of beer in the conversation. Some might just generally be into the old instinct days or whatever. Right. Some might think more about the higher production values that we have here. Like, when people are looking at things, particularly things over time, certain, phases of what they're looking at are going to appeal to them more than others, and they're going to be compelled, or maybe compelled, maybe not the right word, but they're going to want to kind of dig into those things. They're going to want to emphasize those things over other things. And so yes, you're right. Again, because there's so much history, you got to choose. And when it comes to like the heuristic that you use to choose, there's no just obvious objective way of doing it, right? Like, it has to spring from your internal values, your internal biases, all that kind of stuff. So there's a problem. There's definitely problems of bias and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, it's unavoidable. So I guess the key thing is to just find someone who has the same bias as you, I guess. There
is one thing about Black history that I do remember going through elementary and grade school that I would be hold to if I had to, and that is when you had to do a research paper, and you had to actually go and do your own research. Yeah. With regard to whomever you did it on. If it was Carter G. Woodson, if it was Dr. Charles Drew, if it was Matthew Henson, if it was obviously Harriet Tubman, if it was Frederick Douglass, if it was, the list goes on and on and on.
Yes.
You had to actually go and do your own history. It wasn't spoon-fed to you. And so,
yeah, which has its pros and its cons. But I generally think that understanding how to go out and get information is an important thing.
Right. If nothing else, the process of seeking out and saying, wow, okay, really? And there's like the untold portions of Black history, like the fact that, and there's movies on Tubi now. I was just talking to someone on the way here, in that long pilgrimage from South Carolina to get here. I was just talking to someone, and they were talking to me about some of the movies on Tubi where there are ancestral relationships between mother and son. And they are existing today. Not to mention that the sexual predatory nature of human beings is not one-sided, right? It's not just men to women, it's also women to young men. And so when we start looking at that, when we start looking at the fact that there were 40 and 50-year-old nannies who were still lactating and they were nursing the children of the slave owners, I think that's just as equally as important as, whether it's inhumane or not. The understanding of policing in this country, but when you watch the movie Nat Turner, understanding that that's rooted in them being slave catchers, and maybe that is why, to a degree, you're seeing some of the heinous acts. If we look at where the derivative of a lot of these things, when we begin to look at a form of power structure in corporate America that is predatory towards our women and unexclusive in terms of hiring us, it's far greater than that of women are just advancing and they're getting more degrees. It's literally they were in the house getting fucked and we weren't allowed in the house, or we were made to watch. And so while that might not be something that people want to hear, and again I have to reference Sister Ali on this, just because you don't want to hear something doesn't mean that it's not true. That just makes you an unbeliever. And so while I have no problem with the story of Honest Abe freeing the slaves, and that's why we have the penny, the copper penny, and all this, that, and the other, I think that it is also important to understand that there's just been quite a bit of omission. And it's like if you go into the gym and you're working out, you know, and you're in there, man, for 6 months and you don't see any results, and people say, well, shoot, maybe you need to get a trainer. Because you can go work out for somewhere for 6 months to a year and not see any meaningful results if the technique is not right. And I think that now we have enough people that have enough information, that have been exposed to enough information to debunk the notion that our history should be relegated to 1 month because it is interwoven into American history, and then B, that the people along the way weren't strategic enough to prevent uprisings by making sure that they deliberately put what at the time would appear to be docile leadership in place as a way to give us I think that I think that as especially as black people in this country, we underestimate the power of our opponent. And
Who's our
people
opponent?
Our opponent is anyone that wants something for us that they wouldn't want for themselves. That's my opinion. You know,
Just trying to get some clarity.
sure. So your opponent can actually look like you and I. You know, so I'm just saying that the psychology of it, right? You know what I mean? So I mean, while you're away, we're just having that discussion about, and I think that the reason that's important is not because we want history to be lost. We just want a permanent seat at the table in terms of history, and we want all of it taught. Even rape, even everything about it needs to be taught. It does not need to be omitted. If we're going to do it, let's do it right. We're in a position where, as a people right now, we're hurt and we're harming because we're not given truth.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I would add to that, and I guess I didn't even answer the question about, I guess, Black History Month and where that's necessary. And I mean, again, however you want to teach history, I'm sure there are effective ways to do it. The problem I have with the whole, set a month aside for a gender or a ethnic group or whatever is that there's just way more ethnic groups than there are months. So somebody's going to get shortchanged. I once saw Cornel West speaking at Emory.
Or you just lump people in.
And then what's the point once you start doing that? But Cornel West was at Emory. This must have been like 20 years ago. He said, "Brothers, it's Black History Month. The shortest, coldest month of the year."
I could probably hear him saying that today, too.
Yeah, people
He
will
probably said that when he came to West Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my thing is that, I plus one, I guess, to the idea of just, making it part of a bigger story. But to just expand the other point, I do think it's important that, the understanding of history is the study of history is global. Because I think if there's anything that really annoys me when I talk to people about history is the complete lack of understanding of history outside of this country. Mm-hmm. And we have a tendency, and part of it is that we just don't have to understand. Like, it's not like we're France, so we were invaded like 40 years ago by Germany or something like that, or 10 years or whatever ago. And so you kind of have to know about other countries. Like, we don't really have to care about other countries. But it's very important because it just lets us know that we're not as special as we think. Like, there's no problem that is unique to America that has not existed in other countries around the world in the past. That would allow us to have some perspective on what we're dealing with now.
Absolutely. And so, to that point, historically, I think we're ready to roll into it. Let's talk about leadership. And let's talk about if we understand that, and I'm open to rebuttal on this. I always am when we do radio. The number here is 470-251-4707, or you can feel free to message in. Okay.
A Cash App sponsor the show. You can talk for the next 30 minutes if you want to. Let go.
Okay, yeah. $Kid Dynamite 05. 288.
Run it. Nah, but what's up though?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
got
So
my lung back.
good.
I needed a lungectomy while you guys was talking.
It happens.
Yeah, man.
Trust me. I came in with the hiccups. You know,
man.
so if the understanding is that history can be tampered with, or at least shaped in such a manner as to omit things that might per se be deemed as deleterious or negatively impactful. And by the way, I don't think that in any way, shape, or form that it teaches hate. You know, because in order for something to teach hate, the history that's omitted has to be a lie itself. If it's the truth, it was the truth. It doesn't matter if it came from Nat Turner's mouth or Malcolm X's mouth. If he wasn't lying, then if they weren't lying, they weren't lying. But when we start looking at leadership, and we start looking at the leadership that was knighted or crowned, then and now, right? There's just no way that, in my opinion, while I think that he's a phenomenal basketball player, that LeBron James, in any way, shape, form, or fashion, should be commenting on the on endorsement of Georgia politicians, and for two reasons: A, because he does not live here, and so he is not in tune with the struggles of the Georgians here. And B, because, well, he's extremely wealthy, so he's really not in tune with the struggles of most people in general. So I don't even see where there's a level of relatability and the need to endorse candidates from California. While he's in California, he's endorsing candidates here.
Who did he endorse?
Stacey Abrams and Raphael Warnock.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's certainly not the only rich person outside of Georgia that did that. And I mean, it's just.
But why though? Why would they endorse it? What interest do they have in it?
Having a Senate that has controlled by the Democrats.
Okay. Well, the reason each state, we're not going to get into a civics lesson. Each state gets two senators for a reason. They're supposed to represent the constituency of that particular state, while they are U.S. senators at the same time. I'm just saying that it seems like, to your point, it was a lot of outside interference, and I'm just beginning to wonder why. And I'm also beginning, on the state level, he endorsed Stacey Abrams. I wonder, are you that crazy, man? Like, who put you up to this? Or did you wake up and say, whoa, this is a close race. Abrams might lose. I better call in and I better give my endorsement to Stacey Abrams. That was a slap to every black man in the country that stands for it.
I mean, he's a Democrat. And he's doing what all other Democrats around the country did, which was
destroy our community.
Support Stacey Abrams.
Yeah, okay.
He said, my wife named Savannah. Does that count?
No, but I mean, I guess it counts for something. But
I'm saying, does it count for him to,
yeah, no,
be meddling?
Does not give him any credit.
No.
Yeah,
no.
But again, I mean that's nothing new or novel or anything. I mean that's how it's always been.
We
when
know
you become
this.
a battleground state.
Yeah, I mean, really, in a lot of ways, Georgia is becoming the new Iowa. In a lot of ways, it seems to have been that way at least for the past 2 election cycles. And then with Atlanta being this entertainment capital, music, music, movies, all that stuff. It's not quite L.A., it's not quite New York, but it is unto its own. And even that in itself draws the attention of these A-list celebrities, because you haven't seen Will Ferrell say anything about Georgia politics since he endorsed Stacey Abrams. And that one was one of the more that cosign kind of stood out, because I was like, Will Ferrell, man, like, dude, that's my guy. I'm like, why the fuck are you paying attention to this shit? And then you just disappeared. So, and then you didn't show up the second time though, which I thought was interesting. So a lot of these people that were showing up the first time for Stacey Abrams, they didn't necessarily show up the second time. So I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just know we're at this age now where we should be doing our due diligence. We should be researching. We should know the names that are on the ballot box, at least for the most part, within our area when we're going to go vote. The days of blind voting and then wanting to complain about what these people are doing when you don't know, who's on your chamber, who's on your board of commissioners, you don't know your tax commissioner, you don't know your mayors, your council, and I get it, you know what I mean? Like, you just drive by these people because most people don't even know the infrastructure because there's so many municipalities. Like, you probably drive through 30 a day and don't even realize it. But where your address is, you at least want to know, like what's going on in your zip code and in your area before you want to complain and say defund the police, because you might live in an area where you need increased police presence to make the neighborhood safer. So people don't do their research. They just want to just throw out, these slogans and these tropes, and they don't really think about the real world impact that it has on you, on your lives on a day-to-day basis. Like, I remember when they closed all those fire stations. Like, that shit had a real world impact on people. You know what I mean? And they fought for a long time. They had to do a lot of finagling to get some of those firehouses reopened. But just think about it. Like, just think. You drive past a fire station. You live on the west side of Atlanta, and you have a fire station, 3 blocks from your house, and the shit's closed. That don't make, it's just.
That don't make you feel more comfortable.
You know what I'm saying? But it's just like shit you don't really think about. So when we talk about leadership, you know what I'm saying? The lack thereof. We kind of talked about this last time, how we just do stuff just because it sounds cool. Like, oh yeah, let's fucking, let's annex ourselves and start a new city. Like, this shit it just doesn't make sense. And all it does is just kind of it kind of is more, it creates this, it's like it's fractional. You know what I mean? It's like okay, like we're Democrats, but now we're South Fulton Democrats. We're different. We're different from the. You know what I mean? It just creates these stupid divisions, but everybody wants the same shit, but we still got potholes like everywhere.
Yep. It looks the same as it did.
That's what I'm saying.
Ago.
Yeah. But they still building though. You know what I mean? Like they building 30, 40 story skyscrapers and high rises and shit all over this motherfucker. But the potholes is devastating, boy.
Right.
Devastating.
Well, I think that what I saw, like with Sharpton and the Ben Crumps of the world, and anybody who steps up, if you want to talk about Black history, I would probably say that Kanye West is a real part of Black history. Anybody that takes money to speak their mind and truth to power instead of kissing the ring of power and holding hands with known pedophiles who are a part of that group that he is against. And then they start endorsing elections, that they're not even in that state. And then you have, this whole thing is just jacked up. You got ministers right here in Georgia, mega church ministers in Lithonia, who have made, mega church pastors who have made statements against Herschel Walker, and particularly have made, to paraphrase it, that from the time he was a child or a teenager, white folks have been telling him what to do, where to go, what to drive, what to do. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, what is this, a one-sided show? Because is there, can you think of any other teenagers who, when they were high school phenoms and they've been told what to do, where to drive, what to do, what to drive, and given vehicles to drive? Can you think of, we don't have to say any names. I'm just saying that, what about them? Are they puppets too?
Really,
or you just pick and choose what puppets you're gonna point out?
One of the biggest observations, or one of the more obvious observations that I have of what's going on, is that there is no real leadership that you can visibly see. I think the real leaders are the unsung heroes, the unsung leaders that are doing this stuff on the grassroots level, who are the mortar to this wall that we're constantly patching up, trying to keep it from crumbling down on our people. And you have these You have these small people who don't have a lot of money. You don't know their names, but their impact is felt because if they weren't there collectively and specifically placed where they are, it like our culture would crumble very, very quickly. So when we see Ben Crump, when we see Al Sharpton, I think we have to kind of get to a point to where we just own their ass. We just got to just be on their ass. Like, I just feel like a lot of people just get a pass all the time for coming in and embarrassing us. Because I feel like when they show up to the scene, no matter how intelligent or non-intelligent they may be or may be perceived to be, when they show up on the scene, there is an erosion of quality of the message.
Correct.
I don't want to hear Ben. I don't want to hear Ben Crump. Like, why I got to see Ben Crump every time something happens?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Every time. So you guys basically have a monopoly on black trauma. So
Right.
No other up and coming civil rights attorney who hasn't been tarnished can come in and help. It can only be Al Sharpton and Ben Crump nationwide. And who's the other one? Lee.
Well, the one that's actually pretty good that's not with the games is Malawi Davis or whatever.
And that's
You
not
don't
a
see
name.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
you don't hear him out there. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, it's us. It's always boils down to us. We let people go out there and embarrass the shit out of us, and then we're looking to other people to be like, this is not who we are, but it is because we're complicit.
Right.
I don't want to. Ben Crump don't represent me. If something happens to me, God forbid, if something happened to me,
We won't call Crump in.
please don't.
We'll find another attorney.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't do no
Same
press
here,
conferences.
Don't
Don't do no press conferences. Don't march. Don't that shit don't make no sense nowadays. Don't march. If something happened to me or one of y'all, the best thing I can do is to just and this is actually something I was saying to you earlier today when we was talking. The real power is in if something happens, like Tyree Nichols, right? Just happened. We heard about it on the win. Let's say we heard about it on a Tuesday. We already know there's an economic blackout Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Boom. That shit right there would have way more of an impact than you looking like an idiot, destroying shit,
And
causing damage in your neighborhood so the insurance companies can skyrocket your premiums.
And calling it Black Power.
Like it's not, man. It's not. And I watched that documentary. The other documentary was talking about the LA riots. It was just talking about can we all just get along, right? You know what I mean? Just that whole famous thing. And I'm just like, yeah, but they tore down everything in their communities. Now,
Some of that shit still hasn't been rebuilt.
And they not gonna rebuild it, right? But the people who lost those businesses, they want to say, yeah, like the Koreans lost their businesses. Yeah, them people got paid. They got paid and they didn't rebuild.
Well, I would say this. I mean, because I think the LA riots were different than the George Floyd riots, where you had people tearing down businesses that were very few of which were owned by white people. Not that should be tearing down anybody's business, but I think the point is that one thing that the rioters would always say is, they're insured. And I mean, you can tell these just motherfuckers ain't never owned shit. You know what I'm saying? And they never run a business on a wing and a prayer. You know what I'm saying? It might not even have a business license. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to do the best they can, and may not have been able to renew their liquor license, and they just trying to make that $5,000 before the city notices. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So they can get just the beer and wine.
Yeah, or insured. So I think that it's that's all I'm saying.
No, I think that you're onto something. My question is, okay, so we know there's a problem. What do we do? I mean, outside of speaking against it, and of course we're going to continue to do that. The marching and all of these things, and and I'm sure that they transplant Sharpton and them down here to put on the show, and they even brought Kamala Harris in it, and yes, she did lie on television. And I'll be glad to explain it. If you don't like it, I don't care. She lied. And I'm not going to keep protecting people because they're lying. Okay?
When have you ever protected Kamala Harris?
Well, I haven't. But there's this, again, I hate to get into geofencing. You know, when I talked about sexual predators, and there were some female actresses or female stars, the response that I got was, well, one of them is the devil and one of them has been, what do you call it when somebody, I don't want to say blacklisted, I forget the term. You know, canceled, because that's the new term, canceled.
Who got canceled?
Haddish.
I don't know, man. Will Packard up there talking about I can't make girls trip too without her, but nah. And then you know the family members took away the lawsuit.
Well, and my
so
thing
that's I
is,
guess that's supposed to vindicate her. But we saw what the fuck you did.
But what bothered me is what in the hell did that response have to do with the fact that I was talking about these female entertainers who are being sexual predators? You talking about the consequences.
Well, I tell you what.
That you know what that is. That's well, no, you can't say anything about them because they've already suffered. See, no. They were wrong for what they did. Kamala got up there and she hooped and hollered and lied.
What she lied about? What she lied about?
Oh, she got up there and said that she had wrote as a U.S. Senator the George Floyd Police Protection Act or something like that.
Who wrote it?
Kamala. She co-authored it.
Who? But she lied.
She lied.
So who did write it?
No, I'm not saying she didn't write it.
Oh.
But why wouldn't you pass it? Okay, if you
okay. You got to be more specific.
Okay,
What it is was she said that she's been trying to get it passed, but that was an empty gesture. She could have been got the shit passed. She's trying to put it off on another branch of government that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Because they had the majority in all.
They
Congress,
they
in the House, the Senate, and the President. They had the majority. They had it.
They could have been.
So why would you wait until you don't have the majority
to try to say but you got to explain that to the people though.
Yeah, you're right.
You got to explain that to the people.
I'm sorry, but was it a filibuster-proof majority?
Man, I don't know, brother.
I'm just saying.
But they were able to pass the Asian hate crime bill immediately. Now I don't know.
Did they pass that bill?
Yeah, they did. It's been passed. It's been passed over.
That was the first thing they did.
It's been passed. They gave them $30 million, $40 million, or something, 30 something like that.
Right,
but it definitely went into effect though.
So, and the whole world voted for Joe Biden because of the George Floyd thing. You mean tell me you couldn't get that through Congress? All right. Anyway, but the point is that so now the question really becomes, and I think that this is the big thing. We know that we are dealing with a group. We're dealing with our people. We're dealing with people who are fixated on, let's march. You know what I mean? Let's tear things up. Let's believe in Sharpton and these government endorsed and sanctioned leaders per se that keep showing up. How do you get them to not believe in this anymore? And to take a common sense approach. I'm not talking about Southern Iraq. I'm talking about just a common sense economical approach. Well,
I think one thing we need to do is not conflate the two. People that are rioting and people who are marching. Because I don't think there's a whole lot of overlap. I think the average person that's marching is not trying to tear shit up. I think that, again, going back to the summer of 2020, the way that a lot of those fiery but peaceful riots or fiery but peaceful protests and the whole city's on fire behind the guy, the way that a lot of those played out was there were like peaceful rallies. And it is kind of ironic because a lot of those rallies had Democrats, and they would use language like, we've got to fight, we've got to da. And then after that, city goes up in flames. But then you see how the Trump thing played out on January 6th, where he says again, I'm not defending January 6th or anything like that, but I'm just saying, Trump made a speech, told people to fight. They went and fucked up the Capitol. They say he incited a riot. Democrats speak, they burn down cities. You know what I'm saying? And they use very similar rhetoric. And ain't nobody, obviously the Capitol is its own thing, but still, there's no accountability. Or rather, the accountability just goes one way. But my bigger point is that I don't think these are the same group of people. There's some overlap, but not a lot. And I think that if you come at them like they are the same group of people, that is one way that you are not going to get traction with them.
Good point. Good point. I mean, some people will call them Antifa too, or just like just.
But that's problematic because that's exactly the association that they don't want. But to that point, I would say that if you're going to march, you guys have to not be so open which is kind of counterintuitive or counterproductive to a march, but to make sure that no one can associate themselves and mix in with you all and let everyone get lumped in. You guys are going to have some more organization. I mean, I know it's a march, but you can still have you can actually have an infrastructure of people that march with you, who are the people who, who are supposed to be on the outside, the back, and the front end of that march to make sure that people don't infiltrate if they don't have particular nomenclature or identification or something like that. I know you want more of a groundswell, but at this point, no one can tell because everyone's coming up with their face covered up. And they're representing you in your protest, but they're doing things that you saying that you're not doing. So you have to come up with some sort of protective measure if marching is the way that you want to go. It can't just be like we all gonna collect in the streets and then just what happens. But hey, that's not us, because you're going to get lumped in if you're not organized.
Yeah, I guess what I would say to that is, and this is just some firsthand testimony to people I was talking to during the march where some windows got broken or whatever downtown, is that the march itself was peaceful. They ended up at they had like the speaking place over near the Capitol. People spoke. But then like a few people got up there shoot the police, whatever. They were rushed off the stage. And then the crowd dispersed. Like people left, but it was those folks that stayed. You know what I'm saying? And then that's when the shenanigans started. So like when the actual event was going on, there was no shenanigans. But what happened was that those people merged in, but they weren't causing trouble when they merged in. They caused trouble when the regular folks left. They went out and did the thing, and then everybody got tagged with it.
Right. So.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No. I agree with that, and I do think that that's what happened. I do think that I had heard that there were pallets of bricks and all types of instruments that can be used for damage. In some instances, even dynamite and things of that nature that just happen to be just sitting there. I am curious as to I guess what good is a march? I know what in King's days a march was, because we didn't have the right technology. A march was used to bring awareness because we didn't have enough channels of communication. So marches brought awareness to the dirty secrets that were being held down here in the South, and there was media from the Northeast who flew down at a specific time, is my understanding, and it was timed at a certain time so that it could make the 5 o'clock news up north, and therefore there was an opportunity for people to see what was going on. But what good would a march? Well, I mean, what's the benefit of a march today?
I mean, a march is a show of force. It's a show of actual support. It's people getting off their asses and getting out in the streets, and so it's an essential tool of democracy. Because again, when things are online, it's hard to gauge shit. There's a whole thing where one person will say some dumb shit and then they'll try to tag a whole political party, a whole race or whatever with something that one person said. But when it's a march, ain't no questioning that shit. You know what I'm saying? With a 1 million man march, when nobody questioning the support of that. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I think that's the practical utility of the march, is just to demonstrate, hey, this ain't 5 motherfuckers in a bedroom somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And we vote. And
we vote. Yep. And we vote.
If I'm curious, if our inability to demonstrate ourselves economically, is that rooted in a lack of discipline, or is that rooted in the fact that we just have no way of taking care of ourselves and we're completely dependent? I know that there are certain parts of there are certain communities in this country that when they get upset, they hit you economically, and they have seen drastic changes. I mean, there are certain groups, people you can't even talk about in this country without being banned.
That's my only thing. I don't have a problem with marching. I actually went to private school directly behind the house that Dr. King was born in. I know it. Like I have, like it's in my blood too. But I need something else. I need to be able to march, and then I need something. I need there to be a fear of what's to come after this march. So this march is bringing us together to show of solidarity. But after this point, and we disperse, we're dispersing to a common goal, which is we ain't doing shit this weekend.
Good point. Any final thought, Rashid?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I had a couple of thoughts there, but I mean, I guess the main thing is like, the key thing is the follow up. I mean, usually these marches happen and people are like, we're going to vote, we're going to yada, yada, yada. And I mean, I guess a lot of them did do that. And, you know, there just has to be like a credible threat, I guess, to the people that you're trying to send a message to that, you know, all right, we marching now, but, you know, there has to be some sort of something to hold them accountable to, and something to keep them honest. And I think that's really what is necessary. And the economic stuff, we could do a whole show on that, so I'm not even going on that.
Oh yeah. Right. I heard that too. Hey man, we appreciate y'all, man. We had I don't know, man. I feel like I had I don't know. Is it that time of year you get a tickle in your throat? Anyway, East Point, smoke some dank. Holla back.
Old National got the skanks.
Everybody.
Peace.
Do something different for Black History Month. If you want something different, do something different. Don't do the same thing you've been doing.
Be the change that you want to see.
Make Black history.